Welcome to today's Founder Institute event. We hope you liked our intro. We wanted to warm you up with more information about Founder Institute, and hopefully we get your feedback later. My name is Emilia, and I am a content manager at Founder Institute, which is the world's largest accelerator for early stage founders and for early stage idea stage startups. Today's webinar is about Midjourney, or how to optimize your visual content with this amazing tool. And we have invited an expert, someone who knows a lot about it, and he's teaching people about it. And he's going to tell us shortly everything he knows. We're very excited about it. His name is Drew Brucker, and he's the founder of Brainchild. Before we invite him on stage, just a few words about the agenda today. We're going to start with his presentation, around 15 to 20 minutes. After that, we keep time for Q&A session. And please use the Q&A section on AirMeet. You can see it on your right-hand side. It's next to the chat. And I see that you're all very active in the chat already. We have around 100 people online. Welcome, everyone. Please introduce yourself, connect to each other, and tell us where you're joining from. I'm joining from Alicante, Spain today, and I'm very happy to be here. We have people from Morocco, from Los Angeles, Canada, and Nice in France, so many different places around the world. For some of you it's evening, for others morning. So anyways, have a great day and thanks for joining us. Another thing about AirMeet is that you can use these reactions down to give feedback for the presentation. Now, without further ado, let's invite our special guest for today on stage. Hello, Drew. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see a couple people from Atlanta in the house. That's where I'm at. So everyone, and obviously we've got people from everywhere. So this is fantastic. We're gonna dive in pretty deep and efficiently and quick today.
Thank you. Okay, the floor is yours. See you in a bit.
All right. Well, hey, first of all, thank you for joining, guys. I mean, we've got sort of the holiday week ahead of us, so things are maybe really crazy, or maybe they're starting to slow down for you. But either way, this is going to be a valuable session. I'm excited to present to you all today and teach you a little bit more about utilizing AI, and maybe more specifically Midjourney, in order to optimize your visual content and your brand to stand out, to be unique, to be specific, right? And to sort of have a competitive advantage in the space. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in here to my presentation. And so let me just do a quick intro as to who I am. So I'm the founder of a company called Brainchild, where we basically create infinite on-brand images at scale that are high quality, specific to your brand. It's a nice little space between stock photography, professional photography, and designers, and allows you to dial into the very specific nature of what makes your brand you. So that's a little bit about what I do right now. I help marketers, founders like you guys sort of get these things into place in order for you to basically utilize your brand in a more efficient way, in a more specific way. And then previous to that, I'm also a marketing executive. So I've been a VP of marketing in SaaS space at startups, early stage mostly. And so how I sort of got into this talking topic is really a blend of my hobby and nature of being a creative, a photographer, and designer, mixed in with my professional life as a marketer, and experimenting long enough to really understand that there's some real utilization here. So excited to dive into that. Some of the takeaways that I think you guys can expect for today: AI's role in changing, branding, We're going to talk through some of the current challenges that teams are facing when it comes to branding and visual elements, how something like AI or Midjourney is going to give you some key competitive advantages. And then lastly, dive into all of the specific use cases and outcomes that can come as a result. So let's just kind of take a broader step in scope into what we're looking at here. As of today, or at least the latest figure that was pulled, around 15 billion, 15 with a B, AI images have been created in the last year. So that's an average of 34 million images generated by AI every single day, right? So that's just a scale of what's happening right now. And I think this is fascinating just as a photographer, but there have been more AI generated photos or images created than the entire number of photos taken by photographers over the last 150 years. So that's mind blowing in itself, right? But it's also a reminder like how early on we are in this process. In only a year, AI imagery has really taken off and become useful, right? And so let's take a step back, one more step back, and what is Midjourney? So we're going to put up a quick poll and try to get some familiarity with what is your familiarity level with Midjourney? Have you heard of it? Have you not heard of it? Do you already use it in some way? Are you well versed in it? We would love to know that. Okay, so getting a little bit of a mix, but this is, I think, really good information for me to understand sort of the level that we're talking about here. And Midjourney, if you're not familiar, is essentially an AI text-to-image tool, right? So there are other tools outside of Midjourney that are out there. Stable Diffusion, you've probably heard of DALL-E, which is an open AI product, which is now in that multimodal component of ChatGPT. There are some other ones, Leonardo, Stable Diffusion, which are some other big ones. But what I think I prefer about Midjourney is just the quality that it delivers. I'm a big believer that Midjourney is sort of the creator's preference tool for this sort of outcome in imagery. So I'm gonna really just kind of walk into how I got started with this, right? Midjourney is a very new product by all means considered. And what you need to know about it is that you can create any visual element inside of AI, right? So whether this is photorealism, whether this is cartoon, whether this is sketch, whether this is icons, whether this is, any style or medium, Midjourney can do it, right? Some better than others at this point, but it's also important to remember that the velocity in which Midjourney is evolving and getting better and better, that's going to only get better from here. So these are just some different elements of the same thing, right? In different styles. Right. So I saw somebody that was looking for some specifics around game design and so forth. Right. That's a very specific niche, but there are certain elements and styles that would apply to that. Right. And so this just shows the breadth of what AI imagery can do. I think the turning point for me was really playing with Midjourney to the point where it went from fun to having utility. Right. Because in 16 months' time, the technology changed and got so much better that it was undeniable in terms of its inevitability in the business world, right? When you start looking at V1 and V2, which came out in the first quarter, second quarter of 2022, these are the same prompts that were put in. And V1, V2 are hardly recognizable, right? 3 has a little bit of a jump, 4 gets considerably better, and then you get V5 on, and it's really dialing in to the specific nature of what you're prompting for. The coherence is better, the output is better, and the outcomes are better. And so, having that sort of inflection point where, hey, this is fun. This is a cool tool that I can use as a photographer or whatever, where I don't have to bring all my gear. I don't have to wake up early. I've got kids. Like, I don't have time to edit photos like I used to. I can create anything I want from my desk, and you can too, right? And that's incredibly powerful. Is there still a place for photography? Absolutely, right? As a photographer, am I threatened by the fact that AI's come along? No, because I think everything's evolving in that space. But you can see how drastic this shift is in 16 months' time. Just for sort of information and contextual points, Midjourney is going to be launching a V6 by the end of this year. That'll take place in December. That's going to take an even bigger jump, moving forward with the text coherence, the quality, the output, and some of the features that they offer. So let's do a little bit of a test here. And I would love to know, right, with these two next slides, whether you think image number 1 or image number 2 is real. And the reason I bring this up is because photorealism is really one of the main, I think, styles that I use, and a lot of the styles that we would use in a business case. But this is just to prove a point as to where we're currently at. And if somebody could sort of read back the results that we're getting, because I don't have them in front of me, that would be helpful as well. I'm assuming we're maybe seeing a mix of both. Okay, so image number 1, image number 2. The image that's real is image number 1. There's just some slight things that you may notice, which is just the flatness of the water here. And that even could be something that a photographer could adjust his settings to achieve, right? So that's not necessarily even a thing that could necessarily throw the other one under the bus of not being real, but that is probably the giveaway here. Let's go into this one here. So this is another example, image number 1 or image number 2. Which one do you think is real? Also guessing that we're probably getting a little bit of mix of both. The image on the left is real. The image on the right is AI generated. Slight things that you can notice as well, right? Like if you really are looking for it, you can see this girl's hair is sort of blowing to the right, whereas sort of this grassy element here is blowing to the left, right? It's just a little bit of a conflict in terms of the wind. That wouldn't happen necessarily. I guess it could, but it's unlikely. So I showed those two slides specifically because a lot of people can't tell, right? And you stack these images up, and I've sort of run this experiment on LinkedIn as well, as sort of like weighing 5 different examples, and 9 out of 10 can't guess them right? So this is where we're at today. It's only going to get better over time, and so this is just another credibility and social proof point that this is something that can be leveraged for business use. Now let's get into like some of the challenges that took place for me to get here. So, as a marketing leader, what I noticed on my team, right, is that we're in a fast-paced environment. We have a limited budget. Priorities are changing seemingly every day or week, right? We don't have an in-house designer. And it's tough to find images that fit your brand and make you stand out, right? So to find those is quite difficult. In fact, most of the time you have to do one of two things, right? You're either looking at stock photography and you're digging deep, right, to find an image that kind of sort of feels like your brand, or you've got to hire a photographer or designer. Maybe you have a designer in-house to do these things for you. And even those have its own challenges, right? If you've got to hire for this, that's extremely expensive. And then we're all familiar, well, maybe it's not some of us on this call, but we'll see, right? Like these are the usual suspects that I like to point out in terms of like stock images. You see these images everywhere. And if you're a marketer, you definitely see these images everywhere. You're familiar with these images because they stand out like a sore thumb. A lot of brands use them. And the thing about that is, right, it sort of kills your authenticity because it's not specific to your audience, right? And a lot of this doesn't really have any strong emotion one way or the other, right? You've got sort of these corny smiles and so forth. And so there are a lot of sacrifices that come with not using AI. And that was something that I started to notice, right? So if you're using stock, you've got your own challenges, mostly on the compromise side, right? Sometimes with time, right? To dig through the stock library and find things that sort of fit your brand. And then on the photographer and designer side, right? A lot more time and money elements that come into play in terms of the things that you're sacrificing. So here's sort of the business impact, right? Like I was playing with Midjourney, noticed the utility and started to put it into practice in real time. And one way that we did that was we held a customer event back in June. And I was already at that point using LLMs, ChatGPT, helping with some of the copy here and there. And this was a landing page we put up, and everything in black, right? So basically this entire page was leveraged with the help of AI, right? On the copy side, this was, ChatGPT or Claude, an LLM. And on the right, this image was created in Midjourney. But this allowed us to create something that was very specific to this customer event and tailor that to a theme, right? So for us, it was called a campfire. So what we did was at the event, right, we had candles that smelled like smoke. We had sort of swag, coasters, all these sort of things that tied into the event. And all of the imagery, the stickers, the slides that were put into the swag were generated with images using Midjourney. So this was a real use case that was put into practice in real life. And that was sort of a light bulb moment too, right? Because it was like, this works. And in that process, saved us a ton of time, didn't have to hire a designer, right? Basically did it in a matter of, an hour, which would have taken us several hours, weeks, even depending on who we hired for it. So then I started to think a little bit broader. What else could this be used for, right? Well, we could generate images of our audience, our end users, our ICPs. We could generate specific icons. So we mentioned the event. We could utilize images for our case studies, campaigns, our website, right? Because traditionally in a niche like we were in, which was live event production, there's not good imagery out there. And even if you hire a photographer, it's very difficult to get all of the setup right, to get great lighting on the subjects, right? And get people in action. There's some accessibility issues with getting people photographed on site at these events as well. So any live like concert, festival, conference. And so this really unlocked the ability for us to have multiple use cases with these images that we were created using AI. And this was on my title side, but this is just another element of that, right? Like different demographics, different end users, different job responsibilities, all having that same look, feel with the brand color, the elements into the fold. And so this really spoke to our audience, but not only that, these were consistent across the board. So ultimately, right, what we did was build out a branded photo library, because what you can do, right, is essentially identify some of these things, your brand colors, your ICP, your age of your ICP, what they look like, where they typically work, what kind of equipment they work with. And you can start to develop some prompt templates to then run these over and over again to create infinite images for your brand that look like you, feel like you. And so again, has the creativity, the personality, the subjects, color palette, etc. And it's really dialed in, custom to your business. Also with that, right? Endless use cases, because if you think about everywhere there is a image or a visual of your brand, it's a lot more than you're thinking, right? So we're thinking podcast, illustrations, icons, website, sales collateral, training material, internal presentations, external presentations, social media, ad creative. That's just off the top of my head, right? Like, so this can literally impact every facet of your business. Now, the broader implications are pretty simple, right? Because consumers want authenticity with brand. 88% say it's important, in terms of the brands they like and support. 86 prefer an authentic brand image, right? So something that isn't stock, something that speaks to them and has resonance, right? They can see themselves in the shoes of the person that you're showcasing. 94% of consumers say they recommend brands they have emotional connection with, and you can't do that without dialing in the customizations that come with it. So if you're on this call, why should you care outside of the reasons we already talked about? So we talked about money, time, and compromises. But the competitive advantage this gives you is tremendous, right? Because you're able to create infinite images at scale in less time with less money and little to no compromises. You can enhance the creativity of your entire team, right? So if you've got something silly that you're doing for a campaign, or you've got something very specific or niche with your campaign, you can finally get that, right? You don't have to rely on somebody else to do that for you. These are the types of images, right, that can go viral. They can be scaled. And this is not going to replace designers or photographers. This is going to allow them to become more efficient with their time and pick and choose what elements of their job responsibilities they're going to be more involved in. I know some agencies right now that are using Midjourney as a major weapon in their tool belt, and it's not replacing them. And then lastly, the future proofing of your business, right? You're already, if you're using this or you're thinking about using this or you plan to use this, you're setting yourself up for the future of your business. I think this is what we're going to see, whether it's the evolution of stock photography sites, right? They're going to change. AI, right, with the ability to do it at scale and the customization that comes with it. So we mentioned prompt templates, and that's important because, right, you find a few of these prompts that work. And once you do that for your brand, you can just interchange them and run them time and time again. And so this branded library that I showcased right here could be a bottomless pit of on-brand images that your team, your marketing team, or whoever is responsible for that external communication can pick and choose from. And so a couple things to keep in mind, like if you go this route of doing prompt templates, here are the things that I found have really helped me get there going through this practice, but also me helping clients get there. And I think it starts with describing your brand. What adjectives come to mind? Feelings. What's the niche? What's the product and service, right? Duh, pretty obvious. Second, target audience. So this is where it gets very specific, because if my audience is a 60-year-old white guy that is in California, I can dial that in, right? I can use 62-year-old white male in my prompt and get that. If it's a more diverse crowd, right, I can dial that in too. If it's a younger crowd, I can dial that in, right? So if it's a 18-year-old, I can type in 18-year-old girl. Whatever it is, the ethnicity, the clothing, what attire they wear, where they work, all of these things can be customized and built in. Some of the key messaging and values, right? Like, what does your company stand for? What do you want the visual communication to be with the images? Like, how do you want those things to resonate? What mood are these people in that are in the shots? Besides people, right? Are there other items or entities or locations that come to mind for your images? The colors, which we talked about, right? Brand colors, palettes, the features. Is it dark? Is it moody? Or is it light? Is it airy? What's your brand colors? Yellow, black, white? Whatever it is, all those things can be dialed in. The aesthetics, right? So the lighting is another factor that comes into play and can be interchangeable, along with the environment, the camera angle, right? So if I want a shot up high over top like a drone, I can do that. If I want a shot down low looking up, I can do that. If I want a side profile of somebody, I can do that, right? So that's the beauty of what this looks like. The image dimensions currently, if you're using stock photography, are pretty limited, right? You're either using a square 1x1, you're doing a landscape, or you're doing horizontal. The problem with that is they don't necessarily work for social. You might have to do some other things or adapting. You might have to take them into Canva, but that can also be prompted using Midjourney to get the desired format and dimensions that you want this in. And then the last two items here are, what references do you have? What images do you like? Are there images out there that you could see your brand fitting in with? Doesn't matter if it's from Google or anywhere else on the web. Like, let's create sort of a mood board of the things that you want to create and leverage that. And then lastly, like, let's put together a list. What are the shots that you want, right? Using all of these elements that we outlined, what are the things that you want? And so once you do that, right, you then get to something like this, which is essentially a template that you can use time and time again. And this is just one that I used recently, right? But it's like I can interchange this with 32-year-old AV crew member dressed in all black, setting up a stage at a conference. Moody yellow lighting, I could say candid, and AR just stands for aspect ratio. I could say 16:9, which is basically a landscape shot, right? And that's going to create something that I can run again and again and again. And so these are sort of what I was speaking to. If you identify a few of these things, you can run forever with the ability to create these brand images at scale. And so it really is through all the brand templates, and that gives you infinite options to deal with. And so last thing I'm just going to wrap up with, which is just Brainchild, what I do. So we help brands with this problem. This is essentially going through the practice that we just mentioned, right? Where we identify all of the brand identifiers, the adjectives, the vibe, the personality, and we basically dive into it, right? Like, we give all of these things back to the client in terms of giving them high quality at scale with, all of these sacrifices given back to them. And then, again, just talking a little bit to the bigger idea that we're creating infinite images tailored to the brand. And so if this speaks to you in any way, you want to know more, you want to have an introductory call, anything like that, I'm available. The best place to find me is probably through LinkedIn. But with that said, I'm going to wrap up and make sure we still leave a little bit of time for Q&A.
I'm back. Thanks, Drew. This was incredibly useful and engaging with lots of examples. Thanks again. Reminding everyone to connect with Drew. We're going to send you the recording and all the other information. And we have around 10 minutes for questions, so I'm going to jump straight to that. First one, I'm going to put it on stage. I would like to understand how to use Midjourney in the best possible way for game design and development by Somaro. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a very specific example. I think it's tailored to, one, how much time you've already spent in there, and two, how much time you want to experiment yourself, right? Like if this is a problem that you want to solve for your team, or you want your team to solve, then the best way to do it is to just play with the tool, get in there. Midjourney, what I really like about that tool is it's a community-driven element. So when you get in there, you can see people's, other prompts that people have entered with the images, with the results, right? And so you can kind of build on those things. You can borrow a prompt here, build on it, tweak it to get something that's a little bit specific or closer in nature to what you want. And so the way that I would approach this is do some keyword searching in Midjourney's platform and their website to see what other people have developed, right? And get your creative brain spinning as to, okay, like this has a use case for us, or this is interesting, or this is something I could build on top of. And that's what I would suggest if you want to play with it yourself. If not, right, like if you're just trying to outsource this and be done with it, right, and then give back, the power and the time to your team, then talking to me in detail about that, in more of a, I guess, a project-driven capacity would be the way that I would recommend. So it all depends on your appetite.
Awesome, great answer. And when it comes to branding, can we use it to create a company logo?
Yes. In fact, like this can absolutely happen, right? Like I think where we're at with Midjourney and a lot of these AI tools is the text coherence, right? So if you're trying to add text into the logo, that's where these tools currently are struggling. Because they're not really consistent or great at piecing words together or having that to know what words you're wanting in there. And so that's extremely important as it relates to that. But yeah, you can absolutely create a logo, in Midjourney. I've done it. Others have done it. I've done it for people. So yes, short answer.
Thank you. And does Midjourney also auto-generate social media graphics that include text and images based on a description or files?
Yeah, so this is a really great question. Yeah, so like utilizing something like the dimensions or that aspect ratio that I mentioned, right? So if you want to post something on Instagram, you could use an aspect ratio of, I think it's 4:5. And so you could automatically generate the size and format for that in your prompt, right? So you already have that. And then for the social media graphic, yeah, like it depends what you're trying to come up with. Like I said, if you want to add text on top of it, I think where we're at currently with this tool is you probably still need to take it into like Canva or Photoshop to finalize. But I expect that also to be solved probably in the next couple months. It may even be solved in V6 at the end of the year. We don't know, but it's a great question. So yes, like you could basically do 90% of the work right here. If there's no text on the image, you could do all of it.
That's fantastic. And one question about mistakes. What are the common mistakes that people who are new to digital marketing make in their use of AI content generation?
I'm not like I want to go like I want to take this in an LLM ChatGPT kind of way, but I'm not sure if you're meaning specifically with images. Maybe I'll answer both really quickly. I think the common mistakes people make on the LLM side using something like ChatGPT for content generation is they like the idea that it can do it faster, right? But faster is only valuable some of the time with AI. You're also looking for the quality, because if the quality ain't there, or your prompt isn't detailed enough, or you're not willing to iterate back and forth with the LLM, then it's probably not going to be very good, right? So that I think that's a common mistake that a lot of people got drawn into early on, and maybe some still are, is that, hey, AI can create content faster for us. That's amazing. So let's like create as much as possible. It's like, well, at the end of the day, good content is what matters. So quality over quantity to start always. Now, if this is, I guess, image generation, like common mistakes, I'm not really sure. You know, like there are. I guess I would just say this, right? Like with the technology, when you get back certain things in prompts, there are going to be some images that look almost perfect or perfect. There are going to be others that look a little bit wonky, right? Like maybe somebody's got like a sixth finger, maybe like they've got something that's like just looks proportionally wrong, right? So like there's a little bit of give and take there. And so that's where the experimentation comes in, and sort of your willingness, right, to play with it to get it to where you want it to be. Right. So I think that's sort of a challenge, but again, a temporary one, because this is only going to get better.
Yes, hope that helps. And we have so many questions coming in. No time for all, but maybe a couple of more. Does Midjourney allow input of an existing image for context so that the image result of the prompt is more relevant?
Yes. Yes. So this is another great way to dial into something that maybe you don't know how to prompt for. Right. And I think a lot of people can get stuck with, I don't know what to put in. I don't know what to prompt. But you can utilize images that are already out there, right? So if you grab something off Google or the web or your computer, you can drop that into Midjourney and prompt on top of it, and basically control the image weight, right? So how much of that is taken into consideration with your prompt, right? And so a little bit or a lot. And so you can dial that in, and that can give you a really good head start to get something specific that you have in your mind.
Okay, great. So it's a mix of both. Then last question. Okay, let's take this one. Okay, possibilities are infinite. Can we create something live with Midjourney and optimize it in real time?
Yes. Yes. Can you, like, I don't have the ability to share right now, but if you can adjust that for me, I can just go ahead and prompt
Yes,
something up really
please.
quick. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I've got this up. Let's go ahead and put something in here. Let's maybe stay on topic of, you know, sort of the ICP route, the ideal customer profile, or your customer, your target audience. So like if I put in, for the sake of this, like AV crew member, dressed in all black clothing. Let's do like setting up a conference stage with AV equipment. And then let's talk about like lighting. So let's do like something like a moody yellow lighting, and for high res, we'll just do like 4K. And then this is where you can do something like AR, right, which is the aspect ratio. And I'll put in 16:9. So this will be a landscape for us. And so what'll happen is this is going to take a minute to generate. It's going to show us the generation in real time. It's going to spit back an image of a grid of 4 images back to us. So this would be 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we have a couple different options of what we can do with it. So U just stands for upscale, meaning like, let's bring this to a larger resolution because I want to save it. Or V stands for variation, which means, hey, like I like certain pieces of what this image is, but I want to change it. I want to see like if I can get a little bit closer to what this image is and some options that are focused around that. So here's like some real-time results, right, of what I got. I can, even dial this up and get a little bit bigger if I want to like fine tune the details of this. And I could say, okay, like I really like, let's just say number 2. So like I'll upscale that. So that's going to go ahead and create a bigger version. And then I could say, hey, look, like I want to create some variations based on number 2 because I like, the symmetry with it. I like the colors and so forth. So I'll click V2 on that. So once you get an upscale image, you have a lot of options here. So you can do something like very strong, which is essentially this. You can vary it slightly, which will change usually like 1 to 3 elements of the image. You can do what's called vary region. So if you're familiar with Photoshop's generative fill tool or that technology, essentially I could, lasso a certain part of this image and say, I want to replace that. I can upscale it. I can zoom out. And then you have something here called custom zoom, right? So I think Deanna was asking a question about, if I wanted something for social media. Well, you could use a landscape, but it's not going to take as much real estate on the feed. So you could say, I want it to be aspect ratio of 4 to 5, which is sort of like your vertical size. And I could go ahead and go in here and I could say, okay, I want to change this to 4 to 5. And this is going to basically take this image, use that intelligence with that generative fill and reframe that for me. Meanwhile, right, we've got the 4 variations of the images before this, right? These all feel very aligned to the brand, the kind of look that we're going for with the colors. So I could say, hey, look, like I like this one, which would be number 1. I like this one, which would be number 3. And then this is going to give me the upscale versions of those. And then here is the other job that's loading, which is based on the social media graphic, right? So here's sort of like that resizing, if you will, that Deanna was asking about with social media. So I could have already prompted for that, like if I wanted to go ahead and start with that, or, right, I could like an image that maybe I created in a different size that I want to adjust and put into a different dimension. So that'll pop up here momentarily. So here that is, right? And so what the technology does, right, is fill in the spaces that it's adding to the scene. So you can see that the image got taller, and so it added different elements to the top and to the bottom of the image. And so, like, for the sake of this, I think number 1 looks pretty clean. I like that we can see some of the detail of the railing on the ceiling, and then also sort of like the simplicity of the floor in the foreground. So I could just say upscale 1, right? And that's going to load that. So hopefully that was like a little bit helpful too, right? I know the difficult part is this is such a complex thing to talk through, but also show and strike that right balance. So hopefully that made a little bit of sense.
What a great demonstration. Thanks for that. And that's like the perfect ending for today's Q&A session. So would you like to add some final words? Anything?
Yeah, I would just say, if this is something that is interesting to you, you have questions about, maybe you're already using it, you want to improve, shoot me a DM. I'm happy to help and help support. Like I also throw a lot of content on LinkedIn that is around Midjourney. So, if that's something you're interested too, I would highly recommend maybe just going through past posts and finding some things there, because I really try to help bring people from that beginner stage to where they're using it regularly. So happy to talk further, and just appreciate the time.
Thanks again for joining us, and thanks all of you. We're gonna jump into our networking lounge right now, and don't forget to follow Drew on LinkedIn and all his channels. Follow our events and sign up for our newsletter, and see you in the lounge in a bit. And bye, Drew. Hope to see you soon.
Bye, guys. Everybody have a great holiday. That's celebrating.